What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. The whole group is here for preview season. It is the start of something special. We are so pumped to be back and actually talking about college football for real, not this boring offseason stuff. No more court cases. We got to talk actual football, what you're going to see on the field. It's that time of year. So we are super excited. Preview magazine season is upon us. If you're not a big reader, then you just watch us. We will take you through it. That's where we get a general amount of our information, but we're super excited for it. Support those guys that do that because it's an awesome and it's a hard job. But the group is here. Let's go to Reese first. Reese, you've been out for about a month and a couple episodes. How we doing? Are we ready to go?
Very excited to be back. I don't know how much you guys missed me, but I think I missed you a hell of a lot more.
Yes, we missed you very much.
Ready to be here, ready to talk some college football, especially some prediction stuff. Let's see how many names I can get right this year and not say that they didn't transfer somewhere out or whatever, but we're ready to talk some football again, boys.
I'm not sure if it would be a Play the Fight Song episode if Reese didn't mess up at least one name, so we just got to keep it going. JP, how we doing tonight? We ready to talk Conference USA and the MAC?
Yeah, we're starting out hot with two of the better conferences in the country. That's a joke.
Starting light mail.
I would say Conference USA is interesting for its own unique circumstances on how the conference is set up and where it kind of sits in the landscape of college football compared to the MAC that owns a day of the week or 2 days of the week when it comes October, November. So let's jump into the CUSA, and I'm intrigued to see what you guys have to say about some of these teams.
Yeah, speaking of some of those teams, one of them is Kennesaw State, the new member of the FBS, and I believe the man below me is covering that, and that is Jake. Jake, you ready to tell us a little bit about the Owls tonight? I don't think people have any information and are like, what are we going to get and what are we going to play with in College Football 25?
Yeah, that's for you to wait around. I'm still a little unfamiliar, but we're learning together at this point. But they were in a transition period recently. We'll just say that they were a decent team in FCS, and you kind of see it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it. We'll get into that. Sorry.
Yep, no spoilers. I love that. But we're covering the Conference USA first, and then we will go to the MAC. The way these episodes will work, and this is pending. Maybe if we think you guys want to chime in and say we should do it this way, do so. But we are going to split up the teams as evenly as possible. Each of us will deep dive into each of those teams and give you that information. And it won't be too long. It's not like each of us are going to talk for 10 minutes on each team. It's just the quick what you need to know, maybe something you don't know. And then we're going to give you maybe the conference title, who we think will be in it, the conference winner, maybe a postseason award if we think so, or a hot take about the conference, and then we will move on. So it's really just that base info that you'll need to know because you're probably not going to watch every Louisiana Tech game this year, but it's nice to know what you can expect if they run into somebody's schedule within your conference. So with that said, we are not doing recent news. The studio's got a whole new look. Let's run into Conference USA. This is not going to be, like I said, too elongated, but we are going to start with, I believe, who wants to go first on the schedule? I think we had Jake up there. So, Jake, why don't you? Yeah,
Wait
Jake.
for it. Up.
What? What's going on?
I don't know. Was I the only one who froze there?
Yeah, you were the only one. That's why we're
that's why I was
really.
Like, what are we waiting for, man? All right, Wi-Fi, dial it in because it's conference preview time. But Jake, we are going to lead it off with you if your Wi-Fi lets us. Let's start with Kennesaw State and take us through the Owls and what we can expect from that team. Let's go.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that you need to know and that you could be familiar with is the coach leading the way. Brian Bohannon's his name. I was going to get into it before I got a little too eager. They're in a transition period right now. So what that means is they're kind of like weeding some guys off the roster. It got a little rough last year. They did not have an FCS win last year, just to be clear. They beat 3 Division II teams, but they did play Sam Houston State close, 24-21. So just to give you an idea, I don't think the floor is going to be super low with this team compared to the rest of kind of the bottom of the Conference USA, but they still have some work to do. Brian Bohannon's been around, I believe, for about a decade. He had 4 11-win seasons kind of before this transition period. Like I said, I think the one thing you want to know, the running back is back. That's their leading rusher. And it's more so going to be kind of a wait and see. They have a lot of returning starters, but at the same time, what does that mean when you only beat Division II teams last year? So I think you're going to learn more about it if you play CFB 25 than you do right now in June. That's going to be completely honest with this team. And I think in a lot of spots, they're probably power rated the worst team in the country. I would say maybe Kent State, maybe Kent State. Unfortunately, we don't get to see them play this year.
I didn't know that they only beat Division II teams. That's actually insane. I did not know that.
That's one way to find wins and one way to get 3 Division II teams on your schedule.
I was going to say, too, how long's Jacksonville State been around? That's kind of comparable.
What do you mean been around?
Been around in the FBS.
2 years, 3 years.
And they won 9 games last year.
I believe
State started to turn it around at the end of the year.
Did they get, is it a 2-year buffer when they jump
to make a bowl game?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they
Except
just finished
James Madison. They got the stamp of approval last year.
But Jacksonville State played in a bowl game last year too, I believe, from a waiver.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure,
it's
but I'm
all
pretty
a
sure
stupid rule, anyways. It's like
an
the
awful
NCAA tournament.
It's like saying,
a new
"Oh,
team
you're
jumps.
too good. We got to let these crap teams have a real shot at winning the conference you're going to run for the next 10 years." It's a joke. It's stupid.
Yep. I think that's good information on Kennesaw State. I also think I'm just realizing now all those people that plan to start their dynasty with them in college football 25 are maybe in for a longer road than they expected, because they've made that game out to seem like it's going to be almost near impossible to be good your first year unless you're on freshman mode beating teams by 60. But
I think your goal is to just not get fired in the first 2 years. I think not to be honest with you.
I got to imagine the job security there is pretty easy just to be successful, especially with them including past history and only a Division II win on your schedule. Got to make you a one-star prestige program, I would assume. Yeah. But all right, that's Kennesaw State. Let's jump to Reese. Reese is going to take us through New Mexico State. Reese, tell us about this team in 2024.
Well, New Mexico State, everybody remembers last year the massive win they had on the road going to Auburn last year, and they went 7-1. But the big thing with them this year is you lose your quarterback to Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, and then you also lose your head coach, Jerry Kill, who I'm not sure why he left. I was trying to look that up, boys. I'm not sure if you know why exactly, but he's just gone. So they're going to have
I honestly think he just wanted to get out. Like, he's just kind of.
Because I saw they were looking to he's about to be like an off-field analyst for Vanderbilt or something like that too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of situation was.
He's got some bad health issues. I know.
Yeah.
It was older.
The big one was he did not get along with the athletic department, and the athletic department did not love him. So
because you remember that.
What
was that thing that happened with New Mexico?
He threw
major
shade at the athletic department after
the
way they handled the rivalry game and what they let them do and not do.
Because, so they played, let's give everybody a backtrack. They played in New Mexico for their bowl game at the University of New Mexico. And they handled it poorly because didn't a kid pee on their practice field or something after when they played each other, and he barely handled it. And so that's
tough look there, Jerry. But either way, the school just went off back-to-back bowl seasons, which is the first time they've done that. They went to another bowl game in 2017, but before that, the last time they went to a bowl game was 1960. So we're on the up and up here for New Mexico State. But like I said, you lose your head coach, you lose your quarterback. The guy they're bringing in to expect to play, Deuce Hogan, I believe, former Kentucky and Iowa guy, if JP remembers that name. So they have an idea of who the guy is going to be. But like I said, still kind of early. Don't know what they're all going to be like. They can still be competitive. They really don't have that challenging of a schedule. The only really difficult game they have outside of the conference, they go to Kyle Stadium at the end of the year. But I think they'll be just fine this year. It just depends on what their head coach is all going to be about and if they have the guy at quarterback. So
yeah, I like that breakdown, Reese. I just add one thing because you're talking about quarterbacks because it's a weird situation. They lost 3 quarterbacks to the portal from last year's team. So the guys even battling weren't there. And a new coach. Right. It's just a weird situation in New Mexico State. Just a weird turnover year, right? You have one of the best years in program history, and then you turn the page. Head coach leaves for probably get a little farther away, maybe relax a little bit more in his life. Quarterback leaves. He's in the SEC. the trenches are kind of okay, I guess. From what I was reading, like
they got a
they
MAC
stay,
or they got an all conference guy back
yeah.
at like
So
tackle or something.
they're gonna be able to block. Can you throw the football? Can you run the football? I am not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's also weird to see a team that Reese, you already mentioned, that had a huge upset win at Auburn last year, honestly dominated that game. And then you look and going into 2024, now they're picked to finish on the bottom half of their conference. It's kind of shocking, honestly. But if you look at it, you have these kids transferring, you have coaches leaving for these bigger jobs because the game's changing so much that I think a lot of the schools we're going to cover tonight, they had really good players maybe leave that they're trying to replace with Power 4 guys that maybe didn't see the field enough. So it's kind of that ever-changing carousel that you're going to see a common theme of tonight. All right, to the next team. JP, you are taking us through UTEP, so go ahead.
Absolutely. Yep. Let me flip my page here. I got UTEP, the Miners, one of the notoriously harder jobs within the FBS to win at. That's just because where the school is located in El Paso, Texas. You have a little harder to get funds within that part. Something to look at with UTEP for this year, and maybe you're not paying attention to it as much. It's not on your radar, but this rebuild and this reset that they've kind of made with this new hire kind of gives me Texas State vibes with like GJ Kinney. I'm not saying they're going to be as good as GJ Kinney and Texas State were in year one with that program, but I do think that they're on the right track. I think they made an outside the box hire. They went a little younger. They're definitely sitting in a spot where they're confident, right? They brought in a lot of guys. I believe that number was around 40 some new.
Or 11 from Austin P. Sorry.
Yeah. So
you're right. My bad.
You're on the right track. No, 11 from Austin P. Scotty Walden is the new head coach. He came in from Austin P. He brings some of his best playmakers at receiver and running back, at quarterback as well. But they brought in, I think, 47 new players all into one. This is going to be a team that really needs to find an identity. And you can do that with a young coach that is really not scared of the world, not scared of the college football world, not scared of the challenges that are laid out in front of you at UTEP. Like, this is a program that really wants to get off and going into the right direction. Another thing with this one, I just need to find something to make UTEP unique other than just the Sun Bowl. And it's in this weird place, El Paso. It's like across the street from Mexico, right? Just find an identity within all of that. A 4, I think 4 is the win total, right at 4. This is a team I could see if they hit the pieces and they find a way to really have fun and get into this program. It's a program I can see going bowling, right? Like, the schedule doesn't do them favors, like going to Nebraska, Colorado State's not an easier one. Tennessee, like there's 3 losses Liberty right too. There. Yep. Like there's 4 penciled in losses that I would pen these in. Sorry, not pencil these in. I would pen these in. Nebraska is going to be a loss at Liberty. Liberty's just another animal we'll get to later. At Tennessee, again, that's Tennessee. And then Colorado State's going to be improved. And I know that's a program Jake has some opinions about when we get to the Mountain West, but this is a team that I could see like being legit in the coming years, but just find your footing. Like, let's get rolling a little bit. So UTEP Miners right there. I think they're predicted in some spots, like anywhere from 6 to 10 in conference. I could see them anywhere from 7 to 4. I'm gonna be honest with you where Conference USA stands at this moment.
Yeah, it's a tough team, and as you mentioned, they've opened with Nebraska, so I would to see the Miners in action in week 1, and I hope they're the worst team on the planet. If you're a UTEP fan and you're watching this, I hope they're just terrible because we haven't been 1-0 since 2019, so we need you to be bad. But all right, great preview there. Let's move on to the next team. We're moving fast, I know, but we have a lot of teams to cover in 2 conferences. I'm going to take it and go to FIU. Let's talk about this squad. I like to refer to them as the Tuesday or Thursday squad because I swear to God, they only play on weekdays. Friday nights, you turn on FIU's playing somebody meaningless, and you're like, oh my God, FIU is losing again. Now you can realize, looking deep into them, that they've been in the FBS since 2004, and now in their 20th season, they only have 4 winning seasons, and they've been to 5 bowl games in the history of their program. This is a school in Florida, people. Why are they not recruiting at a high level? Even if you get the 2nd or 3rd tier guys, you're talking about Florida talent. Granted, you have Miami, you have Florida, you have Florida State, but they didn't really have another good recruiting year under Mike McIntyre, who's a Miami native. I mean, I went back and I watched when they first hired McIntyre. The news was all over it. They were super excited. They have this guy coming home. Maybe this program can turn around and be something. However, we may say they're not a very good program. They did do a decent job in the transfer portal when it came to power four guys. Let's take a look at 3 dudes they brought in. They went size. Let's start with a 6'6", 300-pound linebacker. Sorry, not a linebacker. Offensive tackle Jaleel Davis from NC State. Yeah, that would be. Meet him in the A gap, you'll die. He's a 3-star transfer from NC State. He's going to be making immediate impact. 6'6", 300 pounds is nothing to blink at, especially if you're at FIU. He's going to be one of the bigger, heavier set linemen in that conference. A Maryland transfer in Jacavion Noner, 6'7", 285, another offensive tackle. They're really trying to revamp this offensive line for good reason, which we'll get into, but that's another 3-star transfer. And then Julian Lewis, who's a 6'1" receiver from Georgia Tech, another 3-star transfer. He could be a weapon on the outside they might use. Looking at their offense, they bring back Keon Jenkins at quarterback. He's got a year of experience under his belt now. He's very mobile, but he got rushed a lot last year. That offensive line was a massive issue. It was probably why he threw 11 interceptions, because he was consistently under pressure, but he also threw 11 touchdowns. So he had an even split. You did lose your top receiver in Chris Mitchell. He transferred to Notre Dame. So here's a perfect example of a good player from the G5 transferring into
and he's
not even a power 4, but a bigger school.
He could be like the number 2 receiver for Notre Dame, maybe number 1. He's going to be really good, I think.
Yeah. And they lost out, and that was their top target for obvious reasons. But in the backfield, this is the bright spot. They do have Shamari Lawrence and K'Jon Owens, both returning guys with a lot of experience, and they're probably one of the deeper backfields within the conference just with those 2 guys alone. And then the size to that offensive line that I already mentioned, they need to perform, because that's the only way this team's going to find success, is that offensive line can get a clue, because that was 90% of their issues last year. Going to their defense, the biggest issue for this team was also on the defensive line. They didn't apply any pressure. They had the fewest sacks within the conference. They bring in edge rusher Eddie Walls. He's going to be a stud. That's kind of their, I don't want to say risk, but their move to become a better team. And I just can't wrap my head around FIU with the Miami Knights, with everything going around that program, not being, I don't know, somewhat more competitive. But Eddie Walls, I already mentioned, he posted 45 tackles last year and 14.5 tackles for loss. He comes in from Bethune-Cookman. So he's still taking a step up when it comes to competition. But with stats like that, you've got to think he'll still compete within the Conference USA conference. So I think that's good for them on the defensive side of the ball. Overall, looking at their schedule, they go to a new coach in Indiana, in Signetti, to open the year. You got to think they're going to start 0-1, because I think Indiana's too skilled at the skill positions to where FIU won't be able to keep up within their first game. You go through those, everybody has the first game where you're not going to look like you are in week 12. And I'm going to take Signetti and what he built and existing Indiana athletes over FIU all day. However, going back to McIntyre, my last point, this is a guy that ripped out 10-win seasons at San Jose State and Colorado. So you got to think at some point he's going to be able to put it together, and it's probably a 5% chance, but this could be the year. And a successful year at FIU, I just told you, is 8 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins. You'll be a hero in their eyes. So all in all, I think on FIU this year, you're looking at 7-5, 6-6. You'll get bowl eligible, but it's just not there. We haven't seen it yet, and I don't think we'll see it this year. Any other things on FIU that I miss?
I just think 6 wins is generous. I don't know.
You think so? Yeah. I don't know. Indiana's the only. I think they start 1 and 2.
Their schedule is manageable. Yeah, their schedule is manageable. Getting Central Michigan at home is nice, but they didn't do much in the portal. And I don't know. Like, you guys ever look at Bill Connolly's SP Plus? I do once in a while for whatever it is, and they're in the 120th in returning production. So I don't know. I just think that quarterback's. I don't know.
I honestly think the production that they lost, though, outside of obviously the wide receiver to Notre Dame, I do think they brought in like good athletes. Like, the size matters. They can teach the talent he can develop, because he's been at so many places, McIntyre, that I think that they can get to 6 wins. I mean, I have the key wins marked down as La Tech would be a key win. Kennesaw State at the end of the year, and UTEP.
You can't lose the must wins.
Monmouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't drop one of those. But knowing Florida, you turn on FIU. Am I wrong in saying that? Like, did it feel like they played on a Friday night every game last year?
Conference USA does Wednesday night games in October now on CBS
I know, but
Sports
how
Network,
many did FIU get picked for last year? I feel like
Well,
every week
I
I
was
was
just saying,
getting their
yeah,
uniform out that early because they
yeah,
would
they
drop it
would.
on a Monday. They're like, we play Friday. So I call them Tuesday U. It's like the MAC team of the
Miami
conference.
Vice uniforms are all time. Those things are sweet. I love them.
I'm sure they'll whip them out this year. It's about all they got going at that program, I realized. But all right, let's move on to the next one. I believe we are going back to the top, and let's talk a little Western Kentucky. Jake, take us through it.
Yeah, we're kind of covering some of the top early. If we're not talking Liberty, Western Kentucky's the team in this conference. I really think that losing their quarterback last year, but they plug and play a guy I think everybody's familiar with. TJ Finley will be stepping in at quarterback. Former LSU, Auburn, and Texas State transfer. Did you guys know he's a junior? He is a junior. He's got
But sixth
another
year,
year.
isn't he? Is he
I-
fifth year junior?
I don't know. I mean, didn't he
Give
play
him another
2
year. He's fine.
2 years at LSU? I thought a year at Auburn.
Got to get
or
his
just-
doctorate.
Alan Bowman level there.
Yeah, but he threw for 3,400 yards at Texas State last year. He was a good quarterback for GJ Kinney. GJ Kinney also got a really good replacement that we'll mention eventually. They let Western Kentucky rank 15th in passing offense last year, so I think Finley's going to fit in right away. The receivers, production-wise, not necessarily there, but I think he's going to be able to throw it around no matter who's out there. It's just like it comes down to defense. Like I think that's the biggest difference between them and Liberty this year. Can they get stops and can they compete on defense? If they can, I think they can give Liberty a run for their money. I don't think Liberty is like the world beaters compared to Conference USA. So we'll have to wait and see.
All right. There is Western Kentucky. Did you guys see just quickly the big red logo they released for basketball? This is obviously a different page, but did you
I
see
think
that?
so.
Fire.
I think so.
But they're gonna wear the
not.
big. They're gonna abuse that because that makes them blow up as a program. Is the big red helmets? Great logo, so I don't blame them. But all right, moving down the list, let's go to Sam Houston State. Reese is taking us through them.
Sam Houston State Bearcats with a K, in case you
Yeah,
can't spell correctly, people.
With the
Um, But last year
Please
they
research this
went
year,
2-6 last year in conference. And this is their second season in the Conference USA. And this is their head coach Casey Keeler's 11th season there. I didn't realize that, but the guy's been there a while. And last year was his first losing season with the program. They're originally in FCS up until 2020 or 2022. They were in the Southland until 20, and then WAC until 22. But looking to kind of build off that last year, they're going to be replacing their quarterback they had last year. Schedule isn't all that promising. Not sure how great they're going to be in conference. I don't see them making many strides or much improvements. But then there's just a fun fact about them. You can tell they were at FCS a couple years ago because they have just not improved that stadium since. I think it rivals Morningside for how that.
I don't think they've touched on that stadium since the 60s, let alone.
No, I don't think so. It rivals Morningside, man. Like it just has the one
tiny.
side.
Their orange doesn't look great when it's faded either. And when it's on turf that's been beaten down by the sun and kind of beat up a little bit, it looks a little off for sure.
They actually kind of turned it around last year, winning, I think, 3 of the last 4. But listen to this. They started off, offense is obviously the issue with them. They scored in their first 3 games, 0, 3, and then 7. They didn't play Alabama. I mean, they played BYU, Air Force, and Houston, but they didn't play an SEC school or like a Big Ten school at that matter. So we'll see if they can get better on offense.
Maybe getting a new quarterback's good for him.
Yeah.
Here's a question. I'm wondering. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. They go play UCF week 2, which is obviously a loss. But UCF joining the Big 12 last year, do they cut checks to Sam Houston State? I mean, we just talked about all the renovations they need. Does UCF now is like a brand new Power 4 school? They have to cut a check just like Georgia would, like probably $1.5 million or something like that.
Oh,
yeah. There's a buy game in there for sure.
It's got to be that one, right? Because that on paper is probably going to be a beatdown, knowing what Sam Houston State looked like last year. But all right, I didn't know if they were cutting checks the same amount as like Georgia or Nebraska would be.
Everybody's different. It kind of depends on the programs involved in it, because
I don't hate it. Sam Houston needs
FCS schools.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's true. But Sam Houston needs it. So hopefully UCF's cutting him a check. But all right, moving down the list. That was a good one, Reese. Thank you. We are going to Jacksonville State. JP is taking us through it. JP, go ahead.
How about a Rich Rod team that was one of the more fun ones to watch in the conference last
Mm-hmm.
year in their first edition? They go 9-4 last year. Their current win total sits at 8. One thing to pay attention to Jacksonville State is just the run game. Man, it's fun to watch. This is one of those teams that you tune in and you watch kind of what they can do. Logan Smothers was one of the 2 guys they used last year. They'll actually switch over the quarterback role in some spots.
Nebraska transfer.
Going back from Smothers and the new kid. It'll be a lot of what you saw last year in a heavy run set, but it's going to have one of the best run games in the country, even just pure yardage based, what they're able to do. Replacing Malik Jackson is not going to be the easiest thing to do in the world. I mean, the guy was an absolute workhorse. He got the majority of the carries for the running backs. It's going to be more by committee in the backfield, that is, but it doesn't mean it's going to be any less potent. Just the scheme itself really opens things up. They're going to have a really good offensive line. They're going to be solid on defense. This was Conference USA's best defense a year ago statistically, and they returned 4 of them. 4 of their best players from that team last year. A new coordinator kind of wrinkles things up, but it's not going to be an overhaul. He's not going to completely change the system. He's going to let his guys work. This is a team that could legitimately fight for a spot in the Conference USA title, but it's also in a spot where it really it needs to get a little more explosive, and they can't make as many mistakes. This isn't necessarily a team that doesn't beat themselves, but they have put themselves in weird spots on the back end of the defense. If you watch their bowl game a season ago when they played Louisiana, not a bad team, but going to overtime, they kind of had that game in the bag, and Louisiana kind of crept back into it late. Jacksonville State, for me, when I think this program and where it could be, is top level of Conference USA.
Yeah.
Just what
They're
they've
dark
done
horse
at
for
the
sure.
FCS level, what they've done in the first couple of years of being FBS, and what they continue to do, and how they've built it. It's kind of it's foolproof almost. Like, you're not going to get a weird year out of them with only 3 or 4 or 5 wins. I think you'll be in the 6 to 8, 9 consistently, especially in a conference like this. If you can get your footing, you'll solidify yourself in the top 4 of the conference pretty quick. So this is one to pay attention to. It's a ground game to pay attention to. It's a good defense. That's not a very big theme with Conference USA, is good defenses, but this is one of them that you can kind of say this is a better defense than what you're usually getting on Saturdays out of this conference, or Wednesdays or Fridays, whatever day of the week they're playing.
Listen,
Not-
I say, listen to you were talking, JP, I was pulling up their transfers that they're bringing in. Corner from Minnesota, a running back from Georgia, a receiver from Clemson, a linebacker from Ole Miss, and then a quarterback from UConn that was pretty solid for him last year. So I don't know, some guys that I think could replace some production, and I feel like you were right. They can step right into 8 wins or be a dark horse in this conference.
Yeah. It's a weird system. Yeah, I don't love a lot of the 2 quarterback systems, but this one worked for him last year really well. The Webb kid that was there last year was more of like a burly kid, threw the ball a little bit better than Smothers, used him in those situations. But then they bring in the Turner kid, like you're saying, from UConn, who won 6 games at UConn, and he kind of just fills that spot. They're obviously confident in Smothers. He's probably going to be 1A to 1B. And so just watch for this team, because again, like, they're going to sit at the top of the conference. I think top 4 easily, but it's just one. Who are they going to get? They'll sneak up on somebody when they're not expecting it. I'm looking at Louisville, Coastal to start the year 2 in a row.
Well, and how do they get at Liberty and at Western Kentucky? I mean,
Tough
we
draw.
got
Anybody that
Unfortunate, fellas.
Liberty has to be worried about, I think Liberty gets at home.
Yeah, except
it's
do
ridiculous.
they go to App State? We'll cover that.
But I'm saying like
in conference. Yes. Yep. They're trying to get this team in. They are trying to get them into the playoff hardcore.
JP, you got to see Logan Smothers firsthand actually 2 years ago, Nebraska, Iowa. Nebraska starts Logan Smothers. Adrian Martinez decided not to play in that game due to injury or whatever. He already hit the portal, but he's a running quarterback. He can throw the ball. He's not very consistent throwing the ball, but that run game is going to be electric. So I think Logan Smothers is a player to watch for this squad. And that was a good preview there. All right, going back up to Jake, depending upon the split for this one, we are going to cover La Tech, which we all have a little bit of homerism for La Tech. So Jake, take us through the dogs.
I know we got a little bit of homerism, but I'm going to rain on our parade, and this will be probably as quick as Sonny Cumby's tenure at Louisiana Tech. I think he's got, 3 straight 3-win seasons, definitely back-to-back 3-win seasons. If he doesn't get, I'm setting the number at 5 or 6, probably 6. If he doesn't get to 6 wins, I don't think he'll have a job. Only 2 returning starters on offense. They got I think it's the Turner kid that's coming back to play quarterback for him. No, Hank Bachmeier's not back. He transferred to Wake Forest. And then they're changing coordinators. They bring in Jeremiah Johnson, a defensive coordinator at Northern Iowa. He was there for a while. I think he's pretty highly regarded because he needs to be a miracle worker because they ranked very bottom in yards on defense just nationally. I think they were in the bottom 110, 120. So they lose. I don't know if you guys remember Smoke Harris. He was a big playmaker. I don't think they return like any of their skill guys, their running backs, their receivers, but they have familiar face at quarterback. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But it starts with what Johnson can do on defense for them, because if they can't stop, they can't stop a nosebleed. They're done. They'll have another 3-win season on hand.
Yeah, I got to see that team firsthand last year. Not very good, but Smoke Harris, you mentioned him. Dude, he was a pretty good player. Like that, he was a lot of their production. I mean, just a small little dude, but man, he made a lot of plays for La Tech, and I can't believe they only ended up with 3 wins last year. That was honestly news to me when you just said that. I think you're right. I mean, looking at it says right here, 2 years at that school, he's 6-18 in those 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can't do another 3-9 season, and I think that's kind of where they're projected right now is 3-9, 4-8.
That's a program that lost its footing quick after some changes. It used to be second, third best program in Louisiana, and it's hard to say it's the top 4 program in Louisiana at this point in time, right? Like it's one that had a backing. They were getting attendance, but like think about it though. Like
it's not Louisiana.
They were winning
bad though,
but they were winning 9-10 games, 8-10. Wins a year.
Yes,
and fighting for conference titles
with Holtz. Yes,
yeah. And now we're sitting in a situation where we're talking they can't go beat Middle Tennessee on the road, or they can't go. You know what I mean? Like that's a problem for this program.
What is the deal? So we've been down there. We drove it. We realized how close. What is it? It's like literally 15 miles. I think it's east.
15 miles on I-35, because that was the rivalry game I built, was the I-35 battle.
And it's like, how do you guys not, with the budgets you have, no offense to these athletic programs, how are you not playing each other every year and saving money? Plus, they're the same skill level at this point.
Yeah, that would be a fun one.
It would be.
I don't know. I don't know the reasoning behind that.
I don't know.
There's got to be something behind it. It's like, how are you? I don't know. Just don't know how we're not setting this up.
Anything to get local support would probably be a good idea down there.
Very good. You hit the drive-through margaritas down in Ruston. Maybe stop for some seafood. We went to a seafood buffet down there. Fire. Yeah, there you go. Ponchatoula's great call. I mean,
I got a question. This is spontaneous, but we might need to do a little ad break for just a second. I got a text from a friend who goes, what code do I need to use on those hats? He must be, I don't know if he's watching. He kind of sees
is there a code you can use?
Yeah, there is a code. It's just the acronym PTFS for free shipping on shopnorivals.com. We posted the picture of the hats soon to be released earlier. Clean black hat with the script. Check out our friends at No Rivals. They're good people. They're good quality hats. Unmatched comfort, unrivaled style. That's No Rivals. Use code PTFS for free shipping. What's your reasoning when you online shop to not order something? You put it in the cart. You're like, oh, that total's not so bad. Oh, the shipping's $8.99. I just can't justify that. Now we got it for free for you. So you have absolutely no reason to not put it in your cart and just buy the damn thing. PTFS, text them back. That's another one.
I got them.
And then tag us when it comes in, just so we know you got it. And plus, we like to see cool hats in person.
It's golf season. Get yourself some new hats, boys.
They got the golf.
Exactly.
The
fairway.
Fairway. Thank you,
Jake. You would know what fairway is.
Yeah, I don't either.
Whoa, dude! Golf slander on the football podcast.
Hey man, you brought it up.
All right, going back to football, but shout out to our friends at No Rivals. Check them out today. They're awesome, and show us what you got when it gets there. All right, going back to Conference USA, we only have a couple teams left, and both of them are scheduled for JP. JP, first talk about Middle Tennessee State University and what they're going to look like in 2024.
Yeah, Middle Tennessee is going to look a bit different this year. This is the first time they haven't had Rick Stockstill at the helm. I mean, what was that, 20-some years the guy was there? Felt like just forever. They definitely needed a refresh. They needed to get some new ideas within the building. This is a team that was used to winning and having good seasons. Then they got to right before COVID and then post-COVID. If you remember, I believe the O'Hara kid or O'Hara, I can't remember his name. He was a quarterback there for a while for 1920. Struggled a little bit. Those are some of the lowest times in this program's recent history. 4-8 a season ago. Current win total sitting right at 5. I am not sure what to think about this team right now. I think it's going to need more than just one off season to kind of get it rolling. You're going to look at this team and you're going to be like, what's the identity now? Like, they're not going to play slower. They're not going to have this old school kind of offensive tempo. They're not going to be kind of stuck in the mud and throwing rocks at each other. They might still have a good run game, but it's going to be modernized a little bit. The Vitalo, I tried to like pronounce this name along with the video. It's still, I butchered it. Nick Vadiato. Yeah, Nick Vadiato, their quarterback. He's a solid quarterback. He is one that you're going to want to have around. And it's nice to have a guy who started a lot of the games last year. But when you look at what he's doing, he's going to need some help. The supporting cast isn't quite there for them at this moment in time. They're going to really need the tight end room to be better. They're going to need the defense to be a lot better after this massive turnover that they had after this offseason. Can you get guys in the room at receiver, at tight end, at running back to really help the offense get going? Again, it's not an easy schedule by any means. I mean, you go to Ole Miss, you got Duke on the schedule. You have to play. You get Liberty at home, I guess. That's cool.
You missed one. Memphis. Dude, whoever is scheduling games, if you look at the first two last year, Mizzou and Alabama, and now this year they add Memphis in there as an easier game. Whoever is scheduling games there is choosing violence.
Yeah, it's definitely a team that is trying to make some money, keep the program running as they should. You know, go get your bye games in, do your thing. But Derek Mason being the head coach here is probably going to try and make this a defensive-minded school, and I'm not opposed to that. It's just we need Derek Mason to understand the offense has got to run too. Like, this has got to work. His years at Vanderbilt, they were all right. He was a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State right after Jim Knowles. He only lasted a year there and took a year off, and then he's right back into it. So I'm sure he's refreshed, ready to make this program good, but it's going to take a little more time to develop that defensive identity. That's why I'm thinking the offense needs to be what carries this team in 2024.
All right. That was a great one. Let's move on to probably one of the main ones that everybody wants to hear. This is in a ton of people's predictions for the 12-team playoff, the group of 5 bid for that 12-team playoff, and that is Liberty. Liberty was a good team last year, went undefeated, got the bid to the Fiesta Bowl, got obliterated by Oregon, and now we need to talk about what their outlook is in 2024. JP is heading this one again. Hopefully I gave him enough time to flip over his notes. Let's go.
This is a program that you're looking at and you're saying, do they even fit Conference USA anymore? I'm sure when they join the conference, they were expecting a lot of these schools to stick around within the conference. A lot of them have left that have been the top end of this conference to really fight with them. This is a program that has way more resources, a lot more money, a lot more support, and just a lot more going on around it than a lot of these other CUSA teams. I would say Western and maybe Middle are the ones you can argue with. Maybe once Jacksonville State or Kennesaw get going, maybe they get a little bigger fan base to run with them. But there's just the money and the ability to go get players in the portal to make a place attractive just lives at Liberty. So Salter's back. That's going to be a name you're going to hear a ton of. If people want to talk Liberty, they're going to bring up Caden Salter, a guy through for over 2,000, ran for over 1,000. It's a good football team. I'm not going to tell you that they're not a good football team. What I'm telling you is that they could cruise. They play one Power 4 school. And I believe that is they play one school outside of like the Sun Belt and Conference USA, and that would be
Campbell,
East Carolina. East Carolina. Without your FCS.
Campbell.
Yeah, well, I'm not counting Campbell. That's like not a good FCS. East Carolina. So you're not really even getting a good team there. This is a team that's going to have a strength schedule about 132nd. That's damn near last. In case you were wondering,
sub spots.
It's too high end of a program to be in Conference USA, but I think they're just going to continue to take these wins and these conference titles, this is by far your pick to win the conference. The Cooley kid at running back's very good. It's just this isn't a bad defense by any stretch, but they definitely need to get better if they're going to battle with anybody in the American, in the Sun Belt. I think if they're going to go and make a playoff run, you have to win at App State. That's the one game you get to prove yourself and your worth. And if you get in a dogfight with them, which probably will happen, I assume that'll be a close game. If you get a dogfight with them and you win 35-32, that's not really telling the committee, you know, even if you're 12-0 or 13-0, like these American teams that we'll get to and these Mountain West teams are going to be better and a little more seasoned when the time comes around. So Liberty, here's my go play some people, figure it out a little bit, and really just start shoring things up, because Jamie Chadwell is a hell of a coach, and I can't imagine he'll be there forever.
Yeah, and this is one of those products that with their schedule the way it is, it kind of raises their own concerns in the committee's eyes, the public eyes. Like, I don't think there was an argument to be heard last year when people were like, "Oh, I don't know if Liberty should get that bid. I don't know." And they're undefeated. Like, that shouldn't be a question, but your scheduling is so easy. Right. See, there's a perfect example. The guy who just previewed the team for you and I know follows them pretty closely just said they shouldn't have got that bid. I feel like this could be a similar story towards the end of this year with the schedule in front of us. It looks like Reese is in a fight down there with the dog, Michael Vick style. Let's go to Jake first to wrap this conference up. We're just going to main points. Let's start with your conference title game and then tell us your champion.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be chalk on the next conference we preview, but you got to go chalk here. I feel like I know Jacksonville State's got a decent shot at being a dark horse, but it's Liberty and Western Kentucky for me. And right now, they lost some guys in the portal. Liberty did, especially on defense, but they also kind of backfilled with some talent at the P4 level. I think they're gonna, keep taking another step. I still don't think they're better than a Mountain West team or an American team. But right now I'm going to trust that they're better than Western Kentucky. So give me Liberty to win this conference.
I have the same thing. I just think you're a year away from Jacksonville State. I think middle could get there again, but I'm not really on board with that yet. So I'll take chalk as well. I also have Liberty winning it.
I have the exact same thing. Hopefully we're not all on chalk, but I have the exact same thing. I just don't think Jacksonville State can bounce back from starting 0-2. I don't know if they beat Coastal. I mean, that's an experienced team. That would be that's probably their best chance to win those first two. Then they go play a Jeff Brom squad at Louisville on the road, and that's just, you got to chalk that one up as an L. So it's really how they answer that bell at the beginning of the year to see if they really have a chance late in the year, because I don't see Liberty losing a game. So I think they win the conference as well. Reese.
Don't worry, I'll spice it up for us, fellas, so we're not all chalk here. Give me, let's go Western Kentucky and let's go with Jacksonville State.
I think you're just picking them.
Let's have TJ. Yeah, well, I mean, I had chalk, but like, who wants to listen to four guys say the exact same thing?
Fair enough.
Let's have Schaefer have TJ Finley be the best quarterback in this conference and come make a statement and go win himself some football games and go win a conference title. How about that?
All right, there it is. Here's a conference title pick and prediction for the teams. Let's go into players to know. They could have been a player you named within your preview, but Jake, give us a player that you're probably going to hear about throughout the year from Conference USA.
I mean, it gets pretty basic when you think of this conference. I mean, you're not going to be blown away by a ton of names. If you had to look at somebody, I think is Willis, the tight end at Mid Tennessee State, but when you think of Conference USA, you're going to think of Caden Salter, and TJ Finley's going to make a name in his conference as well. So,
yeah, I like how you took 3 of the 4 names that way. Nobody else could get one.
Well, I figured I was like, well, is everybody else?
There's not a ton. No, there's not a ton on there, but I was going to talk Finley a little bit.
That's what I was going to do too. But
just throw
that in there and take it from us.
All you, JP, you can elaborate.
I'm just saying,
on it if you want.
you're going to watch a guy go into a high flying offense. That's he's shown he can do. Helton at Western Kentucky likes to sling it around a little bit. Look what Reed's done there recent years, as well as Zappy. They're just going to sling it around the yard. Now, does he have the same talented receivers that those guys had? Maybe not the high-end guys, but I think the bulk of his receiving core is a lot better. So he'll be towards the top of the charts.
Here's a fun fact for you. There's no there's just no big time receivers in this conference. So the leading receiver from going into Conference USA is actually coming over from Alabama State. He's going to be helping out TJ Finley. at Western Kentucky, and that's Keeson Johnson. So just like nobody last year that's coming back had more than 750 yards catching. Just not a lot of offensive production.
I want to talk on Finley for pretty much the same reasons, but I just don't think – I think you're going to hear so much about Salter throughout the year. You're going to hear, Liberty's still winning. They're undefeated. They're going to get the bid. Salter's the main reason. He's what that offense runs through. But then you have a record-setting TJ Finley coming from Texas State who threw for over 3,400 yards there on the opposite side in Western Kentucky. Like, I think he could be the star of the show, conference player of the year. I mean, you're looking at Salter thinking, all right, this guy's already played in a New Year's Six bowl. Like he's the name to follow in Conference USA. I think Finley could steal the show. So that's why I think he's your number one player to watch throughout the year. Reese.
Can I
go ahead, JP?
Go ahead, JP.
No, I was going to say, can I say my prediction first? Because I like to talk about it because I think it'll have some legs.
Okay.
Reese, go ahead.
Go ahead, Judd.
Yeah. My prediction? You want my prediction? In the next 3 to 4 years, the 3 or 4 teams that are moving from FCS to FBS. So I'm including Delaware in this. Your Sam Houston State, your Jacksonville State, and Missouri State. Those teams are going to solidify themselves as the top 5 every single year in this conference within those first 4 or 5 years. That's how
Liberty,
I see it.
Big jump.
Okay.
Now Liberty will stay up there. I'm saying these teams will pass. They're going to pass your Middle Tennessees. They're going to pass your FIUs. They're going to pass your Louisiana Techs. They're going to solidify right in the middle to the top end of that conference. I just think they're coming in with maybe a little more juice, a little more fired up to be a part of the conference and be in the FBS. A couple of them can recruit a little bit better than what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see UTEP get legs like I talked about in my preview, but I think those teams are just going to be a little more ready to roll. And in a conference outside the top 1 or maybe 2, it's wide open to place anywhere in the conference each year. So those are ones to pay attention to.
Jose, I hate to admit it, but I think Liberty will be in the American Conference in probably 4 years, and this will just be a glorified FCS conference.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like these FCS schools are going to come in and they're going to run the conference. Like,
right. It's kind of like the
tough.
Big 12 being a G5 now. Just the conferences are ever changing. All right, let's go down to Reese. Reese, give us your player to watch to wrap up Conference USA. This will be the end of it.
I didn't say his name before because I was trying to save him before this, but Jace Bauer is looking like he's going to be the new quarterback at Sam Houston State. Fun fact, actually from Ankeny, Iowa, coming down from Central Michigan, Chippewas. So, and like I said before, Casey Keeley, it's his 11th season at the helm, and last year was his first losing season. I don't know. That guy sounds like he knows how to win. So if he can bounce back, maybe he's going to be with a new quarterback and maybe get themselves in the win column this year too. So.
All right, there it is. There's Conference USA. We covered every team, gave you our conference title, gave you the teams that are going to play in the conference title. And if you have any questions or outlining concerns, drop them in as a question. Maybe we'll address them in future preview episodes, which are obviously coming soon. All right, let's change over to the MAC. Time to talk MACtion. Everybody kind of loves this conference because of the stupidity that used to come to us on Tuesday nights. However, being local and knowing some kids that went there for school or maybe played a different sport there, you kind of have an everlasting love for the MAC in the Midwest. I think that's a fair thing to say. And there's a great podcast out there, the MAC Connection podcast. Check it out if you haven't. That dude is all over every sport in the MAC and just loves it. So I respect the hell out of that because it's obviously not the biggest named conference out there and has just produced more ugly than it has good over the last years. However, they did take down one of the members of the mid-3 last year, so maybe they're not as bad as we think.
Oh, they did?
They did. I can't remember who it was. JP, do you remember? I don't remember either. But all right, let's talk to MAC. We have our team split up evenly. Let's start with Jake, who is awfully quiet during that conversation for some unknown reason. Let's open it up with Western Michigan and take us through the MAC.
Man, I thought you'd actually have me starting with Ohio. We'll start with Western Michigan, though. We can do that. Western Michigan, if you guys follow us on socials, I kind of highlighted like one thing you need to know about this team. I'm going to do it again because I think it's worth noting. MAC Freshman of the Year is returning, sophomore running back Jalen Buckley. He's going to be a stud. He's going to be the workhorse for them. I think they know who their quarterback is going to be. I think the kid stepped in like 5 games in at the last 5 games of the year last year, but Buckley was stable for them, and I think he's going to be another workhorse, and they kept him out of the transfer portal. So that was really good. I see him being kind of a first team, second team all MAC guy, especially like I mentioned before with Penny Boone being gone. Western Michigan changed both coordinators. It was Lance Taylor's first year last year. They went 4-8, but they're pretty high up as far as returning production goes. So I think they can make a turnaround. But they're going to try to have to keep their confidence high because they have to go to at Wisconsin and at Ohio State the first 2 weeks of the year. I think if they can get through that healthy, I think this team can make a turnaround and actually fight for 5, maybe 6 wins in the MAC. So.
All right, good opener there in Western Michigan. PJ Flex old school, if you remember those days, the Corey Davis days, that was kind of their peak. And Minnesota also plucks players from that school now.
Yeah,
so PJ
they
Flex
still do.
has ties. Yeah, they definitely do. They did lose their offensive coordinator, though. And let's move on to JP. Sorry, Reese, we're going to jump in. We'll come back to you. But JP, take us through Northern Illinois, a team picked in the top half of this conference.
Yep. Northern Illinois, historically one of the better teams in the MAC, one of the better programs in the MAC. This is kind of my de facto MAC team. Every conference, I got one team that I'd usually pick to root for a little more than others. DeKalb only being about 4.5, 5 hours from where I'm at makes it pretty easy. I know people around the DeKalb area. Some people have gone to school there. This is a team that won 7 games last year, but kind of quiet 7 games, mostly because they just weren't themselves. Like Rocky Lombardi was still your quarterback, and he was way beyond solid for this program, really helped him out. But this is a team that came off the year before, like with a lot higher aspirations, and they just kind of sat in the bottom to the mid pack of the MAC a season ago. A higher returning production percentage than most of the MAC, I would say, in some spots, especially throughout the defense. And it's a team that's going to play pretty solid defense for most of the year. The back end DBs are good. It's a really good secondary for the MAC. Probably you could have the argument the best in the MAC if you could take in your safeties and your corners as well. So what can they do to improve themselves in 2024 and fight for a MAC conference title? Well, the one thing for me was, can you really find the quarterback you need for this year? You got to replace Lombardi. It's going to be tough, but you're going to have some workhorses. Ontario Brown, the running back, is an absolute workhorse. You're going to have really good run game. It's just, you need the quarterback. You really need the quarterback to be good, and they're not sure where they're going to go with it on the situation, on how it lays right now. So if you're Northern Illinois and you're looking at your schedule, right, you're going to make your money going playing Notre Dame. You're going to make your money playing NC State. And then it's like, you grabbed yourself a Western Illinois, historically not great FCS program. You grabbed yourself Massachusetts, a historically not good program in general. Like, there's opportunities to win games here, right? And they get some of the better MAC teams at home. They get Toledo at home. That's going to be a tougher one. Central Michigan, they get them at home. There's an opportunity for this team and this program to get back on track. And honestly, if Hammock wants to be in a job in the next couple of years, I think they got to fight for the conference title in the next couple of years. So NIU, just hoping the quarterback situation gets solidified and they feel comfortable with it and they don't have to work too much just to keep the ball in the running back's hands and moving the football downfield more than one dimensionally, because that's what it felt like at times a year ago.
Yeah, Rocky Lombardi was one of those guys that always showed flashes there, but also caused a lot of the issues that offense had. I mean, back at Michigan State, he seemed to be a better player. He played down to that level when he got there. So we'll see how they react this year. And going to South Bend week 2 is never easy. But all right, good preview there. Let's move back to Reese. Reese, you're going to take us through Buffalo.
Buffalo Bulls, 3-5 in conference last season. Guess what? Their first win in conference last year, 13-10 thriller over Akron in overtime. And then this is, was it Pete Lembo is their new head coach this year? This is their second head coach in 4 years. Fun fact, Lance Leipold was a coach of the Bulls for 5 years before that. So since he's left, they've had 2 coaches in 4 years. So it hasn't been smooth sailing. And then just because coming off of JP's stats here about NIU, we got to keep this in the back of our head when it gets to be this time of the year. But when they play NIU, we're taking the Huskies because they're 1-12 against them lifetime, and they're 2-9 against Ball State lifetime against them too. So ain't looking like it's going to be that great up there for Buffalo this season. 3-9, like I said, they're 4th in the East last year. Didn't have all that much success. But when you get a new head coach in, if you're a fan base, there's always the hope that he can be the guy. Which is going to be what can he instill within year one. They open up the road with an easy game against Lafayette, not Louisiana Lafayette. Then they go on the road to Missouri too. So that might be one you don't want to watch the whole time, but you're going to go get paid some money to go play down in Columbia. So,
all right, that was a good one. Let's keep it rolling. I know we're running long here. I want to move it on to Eastern Michigan. I'm going to take you through Eastern Michigan team pick to finish kind of in the middle of this conference. This team last year was so injury ridden. I think they're just happy to be healthy, to be honest with you. They lost 3 defensive starters their first game of the year that they never got back. That defense was still decent. I mean, they put up 6 wins. They finished 6-7. They go to a bowl game and just get obliterated by a pretty good South Alabama team. I don't think people would disagree with me there that South Alabama just out-talented that team from start to finish in that game. Then this year, they finally get a quarterback. They struggled at quarterback last year. Now you bring in a Buffalo grad transfer in Cole Snyder, who in 2 seasons with Buffalo threw for 31 scores and 17 picks. Maybe you got the fix that you need. I mean, they got to stay healthy. That's a big thing too. But they also have another backup ready to go with more experience, and that's Minnesota transfer Drew Vioto. Vioto, he didn't play much, obviously, behind 11-year senior Tanner Morgan back at Minnesota. If you remember that, he was literally there for 100 years. So he didn't play much. He still got some eligibility. So they have at least that safety blanket that they should always prepare themselves for because it killed them last year. They lost 3 running backs last year, 1 to the portal, 2 to graduation. They go and replace them with an NC State transfer in Delbert Mims III, who had 8 scores for the Wolfpack last year. So you got to feel good about your backfield. Maybe you're scared about the depth because you lose 3, you bring in 1 quality. You got to expect he's the starter. It just seems like Eastern Michigan always has that depth issue within the MAC that kind of shoots themselves in the foot. They're rebuilding their offensive line, who was terrible last year. They gave up 32 sacks last year. Their offensive line did. They bring back 2 starters. Hopefully they weren't the problem. They bring in 2 transfers and then 1 senior who just didn't play. So I can't imagine he's the best in the world if you're not playing on an offensive line that gives up 32 sacks in a season. But Eastern Michigan's just that middle of the pack team. That's all they're ever going to be. Because on the defensive side of the ball, they have some spotlights. They bring in Coastal Carolina's linebacker JT Killen, who posted 65 tackles and has 55 collegiate games under his belt. He'll be kind of the leader within that linebacking core and defense because he's played 55 games. There's not many people out there that play that many games within their career, especially in college. On the defensive line, they're led by Peyton Price, who's rumored to be going to the NFL next year. And then Justin Jefferson. No, not that Justin Jefferson. It's a defensive lineman for Eastern Michigan. He posted 11 quarterback hurries last year, but it's just a team that couldn't put it together. They do have some young talent at the cornerback position from Daquan White, who had 12 pass breakups last year. He's looking to build off that. He's expected to be an all-MAC player this year. The keys for him, stay healthy. Sometimes their tough branded ball, as they always like to pitch on that gray turf, isn't the way when roster spots 1 through 15 are injured and out for the year. I don't expect a ton from them. I think a 6-6 repeat season is kind of on the docket again, unless they get exceptionally improved offensive line play, which it's hard to turn around and replace 3 offensive linemen and have, I mean, you might have a more successful year than giving up 32 sacks, but it's hard to turn it around into more than 6 wins at the collegiate level. I think the ceiling is 7 and the offensive line needs to play but good. Anybody on anything on Eastern Michigan? I think this is going to be a popular rebuild team, by the way. That would be my one comment.
I got nothing on them.
Yeah, no,
we're still learning about them.
I think I'll tell you this. When I started to research with them, I had no magazine in hand at that point, and I tried to look it up, tried to look at their own, so maybe a blog. Nobody cares about Eastern Michigan. I think Central Michigan and Michigan take up majority of that fandom, and Eastern Michigan just lies around. There's not a podcast dedicated to them, nothing. So hopefully I give you all.
Max Crosby cares about them. He's building the football stadium for them.
That's fair enough. That's true. And Max Crosby doesn't put out any content that would be helpful to people like us. I'll tell you that much. So hopefully his money's working better. All right, let's go to the next one. And I believe we're going back to Jake. And Jake, you are taking us through Central Michigan.
Yeah. When we look at Central Michigan, I think it sounds basic, But I think when it comes down to this team, it's just going to be like, what can we do at quarterback? You bring in Joe Labus, the Burt Emmanuel Jr. kid also is back this year. Joe Labus is a Iowa transfer for those who are familiar with that name. I think it comes down to those guys. They lost 16 guys in the portal. They brought in 5, which isn't a big deal. I think they have a decent amount of production back, but it gets a little tricky with their non-con. They have Illinois and San Diego State. They also have to travel to Toledo, to Miami of Ohio, and Northern Illinois. So I think this team's good enough. I think that they have enough back with their running backs that they can kind of rely on that like they have been. But honestly, they gotta lean on a quarterback who's consistent. And I think defensively, you're going to be at least serviceable with McMillan. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. They go to Illinois. What is that, week 3? And then thank God they host San Diego State, because I've heard San Diego State's new stadium might be the most home field advantage in college football, because the way they built it, it just bakes
So
in
damn
there.
hot.
Like, I heard it's so hot. So that's a good thing that they drew them at home. But Illinois on the road, I think Illinois takes a step forward this year, a little precursor to our Big Ten preview, but that's a tough one. So we'll see how the Chips do in 2024. All right, moving on. Let's go back to Reese. Reese is taking us through Kent State. Talk about the Golden Flashes, Reese.
If you're a Golden Flashes fan, plug your ears. They went 0-8. They went 0-8 last season. Can you guys, or in conference last season? Can anybody in here name me their only win last year? Who they beat?
Fordham.
Was it an FCS
Furman.
school?
Central
I
Connecticut.
don't even know. Shout out. There you go, Parks. Central Connecticut State University.
That
like
is 31-10
FCS at home.
Blue Devils.
And then if you're looking at their schedule for this season, which I think if you're going to talk about this team, you have to look at their schedule. Their first 3 of their first 4 weeks are absolutely brutal. They open up on the road at Pitt, then they get St. Francis at home, then they go on the road to Neyland, and then they go on the road to Beaver Stadium. It's not looking promising for old Kenny Burns. It's his second season there at the helm. And yeah, whoever their AD is just doesn't like this guy, because it is not
they'd get relegated.
Sled to start, man.
Well, they gotta make some money.
You got to make some money. Yeah.
Yeah.
MAC schools are notorious for going through hell.
These players are not getting or something. I don't know, man, but that's tough.
Was Kent the team last year that went down to Georgia?
No.
Who was down in Georgia last year? Somebody was at Georgia last year, and then the week before they were somewhere massive too, like back-to-back years. Like that's what they do. They bleed themselves dry the first couple weeks.
Dude, whoever scheduled this, I said earlier somebody chose violence. Come on, man. You go to Tennessee and to Penn State back-to-back weeks, you might not have a team left to play a conference schedule.
Remind me to take spread with Penn State. I'll take the backhand of that schedule. I'll take Penn State spread that day.
That's a good call too. But
the number is not going to be big enough.
Plug your ears, indeed. I think they're going to gouge their eyes out before the season starts. That might be one of the more challenging G5 schedules I've seen so far. But all right, Reese, that was a good one. Let's jump to JP. JP, you are taking us through Bowling Green.
Yeah, Bowling Green is one of my favorite ones to talk about that I've looked at so far this season. This is a program who's historically been at the bottom of the conference and has found a way to continue to get their footing and be better. And they won 7 games last year, went bowling, lost to a 5-7 Minnesota team in a real grinder of a bowl game a season ago. I don't know if you know playing quarterback this year, but he's back again. His name is Connor Bazelak.
Yeah, the kid you still owe an apology.
Guy.
I am notorious for saying that Connor Bazelak was going to be way better than Michael Penix at Indiana. That did not happen. He ended up at Bowling Green. But nonetheless, we're wrong sometimes. I think this is a team that's so veteran that they're just going to step up in wins just because they've gotten older and they've gotten a little more experience under their belt. They're going to be good in the trenches. They're going to have an experienced quarterback in Bazelak. What are you going to be able to do to take that next step and fight for a conference title? Because it does feel like there's the 3 teams above them that has more of a shot to get in there. That would be your Toledos, your NIUs, things like that, Miami of Ohio's. But they got to take a step forward. It's going to be a very balanced attack. They're going to be very you're like pretty close to 50-50 in the run pass world. They're going to be balanced in the fact that they play complementary football and offense and defense. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to put themselves in position to succeed. A kind of way Iowa tries to do with, playing field position and playing things out. Now, can Bazelak be good without the problems? Can we not turn the ball over? Can we make smart decisions? That's a big part of this team, but I think they're going to be very solid. I don't see a world in where they win less than 7 games. I believe their win total I have here at 6. I could see 8. Your schedule is not brutal, but you do get at Penn State, at Texas A&M in back-to-back weeks. So you're 1 and 2 playing Old Dominion, who's solid. Old Dominion's a solid team, but you get them at home. Like, let's go chase 8 wins if you're Bowling Green for the first time in a while and really launch this program, into hopefully a very successful next 5 years.
Yep. All right. That was a good one. I'm going to move on to Toledo, a team that's been mentioned a few times. Toledo is a team that won the recruiting battle when you're talking about MAC. They finished 9 spots ahead of the second team within the conference at 68th overall nationally. So they can bring in some talent there. However, what you're trying to create if you're Jason Candle and their head coach is an 11-win season when your 2 biggest offensive producers transfer out. But you do bring back 6 all-conference guys. So that's a plus side. That's why they're expected to still be at the top of this conference. They bring in they return first team Jurgen Newton at wide receiver position, Jaquez Stewart, who is an awesome kick returner for them last year, and then safety MACtion Hook, who we'll talk about a lot later. If you look at their offense, they scored 32 points a game last year, which was a lot of their success, as I mentioned. But you transfer out DeQuan Finn, you transfer out Penny Boone. That's a decent chunk of your production right there. Who do you replace DeQuan Finn with? Well, you got to go and take a look at a guy who played in the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl, went 14 for 34 for 184 yards, and Tucker Gleason, who's a junior. So you're asking him to fill big shoes, and it's not a guy who can really do that through the air, it seems. I mean, you're talking about a bowl game where you're probably seeing some second stringers, maybe guys that already transferred out, and you went 14 for 34, not really a stat line that you would hang on the fridge if you're in the paper. However, like I said, you return a lot of good skill position guys. So they'll have an outside option. They'll have an outside weapon as an option that they can use within this offense. And then you got to take a look at the yards per play last year, 6.5 yards per play. A lot of that was Penny Boone, man. That was a really, really good offense because they could run the ball so effectively, and it opened up things for Finn. They get Jaquez Stewart back, who's rushed for 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. So he'll have to take on a bigger role and fill the shoes of a back that was obviously within the wrong conference. I just don't know on this team, man. It's questionable. However, I think what makes me feel really, really good about them is their schedule, which I'll touch on at the end. On the defensive side of the ball, this was the 3rd best defense in the MAC last year. I think they could be better. We talked about MACtion Hook earlier. He was so good last year. He had 70 tackles and 3 picks. He missed 5 games and he still got 70 tackles. So this is kind of like the same thing that you're kind of getting if you're the Philadelphia Eagles with Quivion Mitchell, who you lose. You bring in a transfer on the opposite side at corner who should be pretty good. I mean, you're trying to replace these guys that made up a lot of your success, but I think they did a pretty good job at it, to be honest with you. And looking at their schedule, you open up with Duquesne. Your toughest matchup is an SEC matchup on the road at a lost Mississippi State program. Like, this team has, if they can get through that game in Starkville, I think this team could pretty much go undefeated. This team's schedule is not tough whatsoever. I really don't see a game that jumps out. Like, they don't have the back-to-back Power 4 matchups that jump off the page. You play UMass in week 2, you're going to start 2-0 rolling into Starkville. Then the game after that's, I would debate that Western Kentucky is going to be as tough as a game at Mississippi State. I mean, that school is as lost as they can all be right now. So I really expect a good year from Toledo. I think it's going to be a good job. It's going to show a good coaching job in replacing the pieces that they lost. So I'm high on Toledo this year, and I'm sure we'll talk about them when it comes to conference championship time. Anything I missed on Toledo you guys wanted to mention? Any? Nope, no. Okay. Let's jump on to the next team. We're going back to Jake. Jake, take us through the Ohio Bobcats.
Yeah, the Ohio Bobcats, a team that I believe lost 24 players in the transfer portal. including both of their quarterbacks, one beating Curtis Rourke. He's off to Indiana. CJ Harris, who played a ton when Rourke was out with injury, he's heading to Cal. So I honestly have a question for the public that I don't know, because I've been trying to look this up and I'm not sure. They have Parker Navarro as probably who's going to be in the starter. He played in the bowl game. The Gunnar Gundy kid, Mike Gundy's kid from Oklahoma State, transferred in, but then I also saw he's listed on 247 as transferring out. So I don't know if he's on the roster. I couldn't really picture him up. So if he is, maybe it's a battle between Navarro and Gundy, but right now Navarro is probably seen as the guy. I just think with all of the guys that they lost over the offseason, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know what the story was behind that. I think that Ohio is going to take a step back in terms of, the success that they've recently had, and we're kind of accustomed to seeing them not being the best in the MAC, but more of a third or fourth place team overall. I don't know. FPI right now, I think, has them around 6-ish wins. But that's not really something we're accustomed to. It makes me think what's kind of going on there. I don't really know.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know. I haven't heard of Gundy transferring out. So I would think he would probably compete and win that starting job. If not, I mean, he has Power 4 experience, very minimal. His biggest play in his career was down 48-0, shaking his hands. That's the one you see all the time. So that would be an interesting story to follow. But let's move on to Reese. Reese is going to take us through the Zips of Akron with a top 5 worst rebrand of all time. Take us through it, Reese.
Good thing
It's all right. We can talk about the rebrand. Go back to the Zip
Guys,
logo.
It's okay. Right. He's been gone for a while.
He's just got to get into the motion. We're good.
He's still muted.
Still not talking, Reese. God, he's still going.
You're still muted.
He's still adamant that he's going.
Yeah, there it is.
I was talking to dogs, guys. Calm down, whatever.
All right, here we go.
Either way, 1-7 last year in conference. So this is going to be another tough year for all you Zips fans. 1-7 in conference last season.
Reese get Akron and Kent State.
Yeah,
and I also took Buffalo. I took the bottom 3 teams that finished in the East. Just a heads up. But they have a tough 3 out of 4 weeks too. Not as tough as Kent State, obviously, but they open up with at Ohio State. Whatever that spread is, I don't think it's going to be big enough either. And they also go on the road to Poughkeepsie, and then they get Colgate at home, and they go on the road to South Carolina. So doesn't look promising for the Zips to start off the year. It's Joe Moorhead's 3rd season with the program. He's 4-20 overall. Didn't bring a whole lot in through the portal. He's been a part of winning programs. He was a head coach at Mississippi State before. He's also a part of the Oregon program. So we'll see what he has in store for this year, or not Oregon, or Oregon, and then Penn State as well too. So we'll see what he has in store from this year. But it's a rough opening for the year. You got to hope when you get to. I think they just got to get through these 3 out of 4 weeks with everybody healthy. So that way those guys can just get some experience. That way when conference season rolls around, you get guys who are a little more confident. Playing at home is going to be a little different than playing in Columbus in the shoes. So can't help some comments for those guys.
I believe that game in Columbus is either the 2:30 slot on CBS or it's Big Noon. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's the 2:30 slot on CBS. So not only are they opening in the shoe, they're opening in like CBS prime time, the first Big Ten game in that slot. So good luck, Zips.
Yeah. To be fair with Akron, they were in a lot of games last year, but just couldn't stop turning the ball over. Like they played good defense. They were top 40 and like yards given up, but they just could not stop turning the ball over. So hopefully maybe if they get to like a similar spot, they start getting those 1-possession games to flip.
They did almost take down that Indiana team in that game. That was an ugly one that Indiana just outlasted them in overtime. I do remember that. All right, down to JP. JP, tell us a little bit about the Ball State Cardinals this year.
Yeah, Ball State. Let me tell you something about Ball State. They have one of the uglier helmets in the country when they have the black lid and it just says Ball State in like impact font. It's rough. We got a great logo. Use it. All right. You're welcome. Just looking at Ball State right now, quarterback issues could be another situation here with this program. Right now, I think the Caden Samanza kid is going to be slated for it. He's just a freshman, but the Aiden Leffler kid at backup is one of them's going to have to take the reins because this is a team that really needed it a season ago and didn't get a ton out of it. So when you look at Ball State, new defensive coordinator, a ton of guys left the program. They only got like 2 returning starters on the defensive side of the football. you can't stop anybody. You can't win football games, especially in the MAC when we get into those weird midweek games in the MAC. And the ball is just, I mean, with who Miami of Ohio is, who Northern Illinois is, and what Toledo has proven they can do, these are all teams that could run the football down your throat and not even blink about it. So got to pay attention to that. If you're Ball State and you're looking, how do I get back towards the middle top of the MAC? I think you're going the right direction. If you could just find an identity again. I mean, it just feels like it's had a big exodus out of the program. They had a good couple of years. I believe in the COVID year, they played for a conference title, or even in 21. Just find a way to get back into that rhythm. It's not going to be on the defensive side this year. I think they're in a weird spot. But I don't think if they win 7 games, if they win 6 games or so right now, you're looking for a new coach next fall. So Ball State, there's not too much interesting on this, especially when we're doing it in June. We'll have more for a lot of these teams later, but there's not a ton on Ball State that you need to know and be really blinking at unless they're on your team schedule.
All right, that's Ball State. We got one very important team left to wrap up tonight's previews. We're going down to Jake to talk about the defending MAC champs, Miami of Ohio, picked to repeat by most. Jake, tell us about them.
Yeah, I think for good reason they're picked to repeat. It's just a matter of can they get through probably the first 3 weeks of the year, and we could touch on that too in just a minute. But Chuck Martin's going into his 11th year. I believe that was the first time they won 11 games since Roethlisberger. You got to you might.
Those are Roethlisberger teams that lost to Iowa too. If you wanted to have fun with that fun fact,
sick brag.
Congratulations, Jordan.
Ohio. Hey. So that's just how much it's been a process for Chuck Martin. He's had it over the past decade, and they were really at the top last year, and I think they can do it again. They lost a running back to Ole Miss. They lost a pretty good defensive end to Oklahoma, but they did replace a couple of guys from Louisville through the transfer portal. So there's some Power 4 talent that's going back to Miami. It's the theme. It's such a stupid comparison, but it really does come down to quarterback play with this team because they have an important name. We're going to talk about probably guys in this conference. Brett Gabbert is probably the most recognizable name in this conference now that some of those Toledo guys have left. He's coming back for his 6th year. He hasn't played, guys, in all 12 games since 2019. I think last year he played in 8. The year before that might have been 4. So I don't know. If we can get a full year out of Gabbert, they lead ESPN's FPI rankings for percentage to win the conference. So out of all the teams in the MAC, their percentage is the highest. Their record is set around 7-5 because they play Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame to start the year. Like I said, they can get through that. Gabbert can stay healthy. I think it's clear and cut that this is the best team in the conference because I just think Toledo lost too much last year, and for Candle not to win the conference with that talented team at Toledo is just he lost his chance because I think it's Miami's to take.
I agree with you.
It's a little bit embarrassing at Toledo, but going back to the first 2 games of the schedule, Jake, you got Northwestern, and then you get Cincinnati at home.
They beat last year.
You got to think they get one of them though, right? You got to think they get Cincinnati at home, or they go on the road at Northwestern right on the lake in front of 15,000 and get that one. It's not like you're walking in a tough environment.
I think it's reasonable they could get both if all things click. I think, honestly, the returning production for Northwestern is really bad on offense. So week 1's going to be rough for them, meshing and everything together. They won at Cincinnati last year, and I don't think Cincinnati's really getting any better. So I think they have an opportunity to maybe they shock the world. And then when they go to South Bend in week 3.
Yeah, I think if you start 2-0 there, you got to feel really good about repeating, and as they should, because you mentioned what Toledo lost. But all right, that's every individual team preview of the MAC. Now let's go to the grand scheme things. Let's talk conference title game and conference champion. Let's let JP open it up.
Yeah, I'm not too excited here. I have Miami of Ohio in this. I have Northern Illinois as your other one. I agree with Jake in the fact that whether Toledo's good or not, I think it's too much to replace. It would be kind of funny, though, if everybody was on Toledo to win a title the last 2 years of the conference and they didn't, and then everybody gets off of them, and that's the year they go win it. I could see that. We see it all the time with Washington last year and a couple others. But I have Miami of Ohio over Northern Illinois in your conference champ being the Red Hawks.
All right. I like that. I'm going to take the opposite side, which you just said. I'm going to say Miami and Toledo again. Give me Toledo. I think this year they can get it done. It sneaks in Miami on top of the world. All of a sudden, Toledo sneaks in, and this is the year they get it done kind of when nobody expects them to because they lost the star power they lost. So I think Toledo wins the MAC in 2024. Reese, what do you got? This kid's got to stay off the mute button. It's the it's first,
the dogs over here barking stuff, so I got to mute it out of respect for the listeners. But I got Miami, Ohio, and Toledo. I went chalk. I mean, when you look at these two coaches, they combined for 4 of the past 7 MAC titles, so I think it's hard to go away from one of these guys. I'm going to lean Miami, Ohio to win it. I just think they bring back too much. And I just think if they're going to be going up against Toledo, I just think with the guys you're bringing in or the guys you're bringing back, I think with that experience, they'll be fine.
All right. Couple of chalk picks back to back. Jake, do you have something different or are you chalking with us?
Yeah, no, I was going to go chalk in my original, but after kind of talking this through, let's lay this out a little bit. The top 3 rushers are back from, you got Brown at Northern Illinois, you got Buckley at Western Michigan, and you got Stewart at Bowling Green. Is it not ironic that they are Northern Illinois predicted 3rd, Bowling Green's 4th, Western Michigan's 5th from like Athlon? What does it tell you? It snows in these MAC towns. Like it gets dirty. It becomes dirty football kind of once it becomes a Tuesday night in November. So I'm going to pick a team that relies on its running game. Obviously I have Miami of Ohio in there. I'm going to go with Bowling Green because I love what they have at the running back position with Stewart, but what's Bazelak? He's got to be in his 5th or 6th year now, isn't he? So he's got the upper hand over whatever Toledo's going to offer. So you got a run game and you have an experienced quarterback. I think that's going to win you these MACtion games when it gets to the nitty gritty. So Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green.
I'm a fan of that. I wanted to do that and put Bowling Green there because I had a ton of fun just reading about them and learning more about that program. That's because it's traditionally bad, but I couldn't pull the trigger to put them in the MAC title game.
Bowling Green gets in some dogfights.
Toledo's got nothing like after talking through it. They don't really have much coming back for them offensively. I just don't.
And we're talking conference title picks right now. This is like my first, just probably 2nd or 3rd read through on the MAC. This is probably not the same title game I'll have when it gets to August and we run through everything and do our conference title
picks
game. I can't remember what we called that game, but
our conference
point game.
The conference title point game.
Great game.
But
great name for the game.
This would be when I go back and I really check out. But I do think Miami, Ohio is a solidified one that I'll have in it.
I mean, the MAC, we're always trying to take a shot in the dark with like, the 4th or 5th option because it's probably a decent guess in this conference.
Exactly.
All right, that's conference title game picks and winners. Let's talk about players to know. I'll open it up. I mentioned him when I'm talking about Toledo, but MACtion Hook is a stud, man. Everybody got shocked last year where you're watching the first round of the NFL draft, and all of a sudden they say Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, and you're like, what the hell? Somebody from the MAC went in the first round. Who is this kid? I think MACtion Hook could be that guy. 3-time All MAC. He posted 70 tackles, missing 5 games last year. Come on, man. So watch out for that one. That's going to be another guy that shocks you somewhere in the NFL draft. JP.
For me, it's going to be Harold Fannin Jr., the kid from the tight end from Bowling Green. He's going to be Bazelak's favorite target. If he can grab you 50, 60 receptions and just be a reliable guy, he's going to be first team All MAC. It's just one of those things where the tight end's good, man. It helps the offense and quarterback out a ton. And I think he's one you'll see a lot of receptions too on Tuesday nights.
I love that. All right, down to Reese. Reese, give us a player to watch in the MAC conference.
Well, I just think, we've said his name a lot, but I think Bazelak is a name that everybody recognizes just because of where he was at Indiana.
Better than Penix.
Better than Penix. That's what I'm saying. But it's also like,
give him a shot. He's still got a year left.
Dude, I swear to you, I thought it was going to be.
You never know, man. The guy could be a gunslinger. I remember that opening night against Illinois when we took Illinois, but they had the hook or whatever. Yep. Anyway, but I think Bazelak will be a great guy for that program. Bowling Green, like you say, talk about the MAC every year. There could be a team in the middle that could just take a shot, and if you get a quarterback that can just not turn the ball over and get the ball to the guys that he needs to, I think Bazelak can be just fine for this team.
Love that pick. All right, down to Shaper to round us out, players to watch.
Yeah, I forgot to bring this guy up because I heard him on a podcast and a MAC preview, and I forgot about him because I do remember watching him when Akron and Kent State were playing last year, because I think he had just 2 terrible penalties, but he's too good not to mention. Krishan, I think it's Krishan, they call him Big Play McCray. Krishan McCray, the receiver at Kent State. He's the one receiver that leads the MAC coming back this year in yards. He had, I think, like, I don't know, 700 last year. Again, not a conference that produces a ton of yards, but I think it's only fair that we highlight a Kent State player before we put a bow on this. And I honestly think he's going to be solid. And he's probably going to get the ball thrown to him a ton, because number one, they're going to be getting blown out. And number two, he's probably their only option in that offense. So we'll see if Big Play McCray can get up to 900 yards this year.
Big Play McCray.
If he survives back-to-back trips to Knoxville and then Happy Valley, watch out, because that's going to be a player to watch. But that is such a tough schedule we're going to bring that up later, I'm sure, when we talk grand scheme of college football preview. But all right, that's everything in the MAC. Any hot takes laying out there in the MAC? I know we had not get to do this for Conference USA, but did anybody have any hot takes on the MAC this year, other than Bowling Green could win it?
No, I don't have any hot takes in the MAC. I think the MAC's the MAC.
Yeah, the MAC is. That's a great way to put it.
You can't put a hot take on the MAC.
Yeah, I was gonna say something weird's gonna happen.
It's the wild, wild west.
Your hot take would be like lukewarm after you see what actually happens in the real world with this conference.
It's not a hot take. It's just an observation. Let's take the toilet bowl of this game. Let's take Akron versus Kent State at the end of the year. They duke it out. Loser has to go to Division II football relegation, not FCS. They go to Division II.
Oh, wow.
All right. That's everything for tonight's previews. We covered the entire Conference USA and the entire MAC conference. We have another one coming. We will update you as we plan out which conferences, which weeks. Obviously, not all of them will be dual. We're going to split up the Big Ten and the SEC because there's so many teams and we need to spend time talking about those teams. But when it comes to these smaller conferences, we just got to let you know what to expect. Something you're going to flip on a Thursday or Friday and watch, or a Wednesday. As you said, the Conference USA Wednesday contract is in full effect. So you just got to know some base information. But that is everything tonight. Make sure you hit the follow button on all platforms. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. You're already there. We're on the road to 300. We need to get to 500 before the season starts. Let's make it happen, people. You have the power.
Like, comment, subscribe, people.
Do all those things on YouTube. Hit the hit the follow button on X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Shop norivals.com.
Hit those hats.
Go in there. Buy some new caps. There's good looks. There's an Arkansas cap floating around on there. I'm not sure if the Hogs fans knew about it. It's an NIL cap, so you support a player as well as look fly. So there's absolutely no reason to not do it. Use code PTFS to get free shipping. That's all tonight. We'll see you next week for another preview. Jake, take us away.
Play.